Good afternoon, my name is Budget Scale Modeling, and today I have something somewhat different. I have some game pieces for the tabletop naval combat game Black Seas. I saw that my local hobby store had these, and I made the executive decision to start a new model collection, as if I didn't have enough already. Anyway, this is a fun opportunity to diversify my content into Age of Sail stuff. Our journey begins, as these things typically do, at the start. Included in this kit are 3 third-rate ships of the line. The main bulk of these ships is plastic, with some included pieces of cast metal as an optional replacement. Also included is a set of various paper flags, a spool of thin black twine, a set of shrouds printed on plastic sheets, paper sails, and game-related informational cards. The principal assembly of the hulls is quite simple, and after working with so many complex kits, I like the simple assembly and the fact that there weren't 9 million pieces per ship. The whole of the instructions is on a single page, although the rigging and other rigging-related assemblies are absent from the instructions. Still, it was nice to not have to fight with the kit the entire time. The kit also gives you a few customization options in the form of changing each ship's stern gallery and figurehead. There are a few design choices that made the assembly much smoother, like the fact that the lifeboats have flat bottoms, which makes them easier to glue to the deck. Here you can see the excellent quality of the molds. Here you can also see me attaching this balcony to the wrong spot on all 3 ships, which I will not realize until much later. So far, the only finicky part is the anchors, which I can't figure out how to orient. Onto the painting. First, all 3 ships receive a uniform coat of Vallejo black primer straight out of the can. As for the ships themselves, I will be going off of the official color guide, which looks like this, meaning I'll have to mix up some paints to make whatever this is. I had to make multiple batches of this color, so if it looks inconsistent, no it doesn't. This color will be applied to the hull, masts, and trim on the fore and aft sections. But certain areas of the ship will be kept black, like the cannons and the lower hull. I then use a dark blue, which might be ultramarine or cobalt, for these upper sections around the foredeck and the quarterdeck, and off-white for the furled lower sails on the masts and the lifeboats, and a leather brown for the decks. The paint job for the second ship will be a more conventional paint scheme like you see on contemporary ships from other navies. I wanted this ship to be somewhat modeled after the real-life ship Le Bucentaure, which is most famous for being the flagship of French Admiral Pierre-Charles Villeneuve at the Battle of Trafalgar, which I will discuss at length at the end of this video. The third ship is painted like the first one, although I've refined my technique and therefore I need to do fewer touch-ups. I'm quite pleased with how these have turned out. Now, this is where things become very complicated and very frustrating. See, I have a confession to make. I've never rigged a model ship before. Shocking, I know. I'll give you all a minute to process this information. Usually, I'm too worried about breaking those tiny, fragile masts that never seem to have enough structural integrity to hold tension on a length of twine or plastic rigging. This time, however, presented me with an opportunity to rig the ships, given that I was supplied with a generous quantity of twine and the fact that the masts were stronger and less likely to break. Like I mentioned earlier, the rigging instructions are not included in the kit, but can be found on the Warlord Games website, broken down into detailed steps with useful diagrams. Unfortunately, I do a very poor job of following these diagrams. Especially when it comes to rigging the individual masts, I keep cutting the pieces too short. Thankfully, you can hardly tell on the models where I had to graft 2 pieces of twine together. You would think I would learn my lesson the first time, but this happens 5 more times. I just can't figure it out. Look, I even put these sails on backwards. I ended up not installing the shrouds because I thought they looked kind of tacky. Now, on to the story of Le Bucentaure. She was an 80-gun, third-rate ship of the line laid down at the Arsenal de Toulon in 1802 and launched the following year. She was named after the Bucentoro, the Venetian ceremonial barge used to transport the Doge and participate in a symbolic marriage rite between the nation of Venice and the sea, which takes place on the Feast of the Ascension. The last such vessel was destroyed by French troops in 1798 following Napoleon's invasion and subsequent occupation. Her first action ever was under the command of Admiral Pierre-Charles Villeneuve, who was at the head of a Franco-Spanish fleet headed for the English Channel. The orders at the time were to break the British blockade and draw them to the West Indies, where the Spanish and the other half of the French fleet, currently interred at Brest, would meet them. There they would form a fleet large enough to challenge the Royal Navy's Channel Squadron and give Napoleon enough time to land troops in England. He nailed the first half of his mission, but as you will come to see, he fumbles the second half pretty darn bad. Villeneuve's fleet slipped free in March of 1805 and made for the West Indies, meeting the Spanish at the island of Antigua and forming a 40-ship fleet that he would command along with Spanish Admiral Federico Gravina. When the other French fleet, led by Admiral Ganteaume, did not show and Villeneuve received news of Nelson's arrival, he left the West Indies. He made good time, outrunning the pursuing English, led by Admiral Horatio Nelson, by a matter of days. Nelson then incorrectly assumed that Villeneuve was headed to Egypt, so he missed the French again, allowing them to return to Spain. After meeting a British fleet off Cape Finisterre and losing 2 Spanish ships, Villeneuve decided to ignore his orders and run back to Cadiz, where Nelson's fleet promptly boxed them in. This news didn't go over well with Napoleon, who threatened to replace him, which, as we all know, is the only way to motivate a government employee to do their job. It worked. After a long and probably heated debate with the Spanish, who wanted to wait for more favorable conditions, the fleet left Cadiz in a disorganized manner and at a major disadvantage due to the slow winds. The British fleet formed into 2 columns, one led by Nelson and the other led by Admiral Cuthbert Collingwood. They made a slow approach, which took about 6 hours, and in the last hour they came under heavy fire from the French and Spanish, which mostly missed due to the former's poor gunnery training and lack of combat experience. After Collingwood's flagship, the Royal Sovereign, broke the line astern of the Santa Ana, Nelson and HMS Victory split the French line astern of Le Bucentaure and ahead of Le Redoutable, sending a raking broadside into both and putting the former out of action for most of the battle. Victory then moved to the starboard side of Villeneuve's flagship, and the engagement devolved into a grueling close-quarters melee during which Admiral Nelson was mortally wounded by a French sharpshooter on the mizzen-top of Redoutable. At some point, Admiral Gravina left the scene of the battle with a contingent of Spanish ships, though he was also gravely wounded and would die 6 months afterwards. The brawl continued until most of the French ships had struck their colors, and the British had very little time to make off with their prizes as a storm had taken shape. Many of the ships were left to fend for themselves, including Le Bucentaure and the 140-gun Spanish Nuestra Señora de la Santísima Trinidad, which was too heavy to be towed. Villeneuve would spend a limited time in England as a prisoner before being returned in a prisoner swap, and would be found dead in the Hôtel de la Patrie in Rennes. His death was ruled as a suicide, but there is enough evidence to say that he was assassinated on Napoleon's orders for his lackluster performance and humiliating defeat which ended all plans to invade Britain.